Hi there, and welcome to Destination Harlem TV, the show about all the people, places, events, and businesses that make Harlem great. I'm Meg Malley, and thank you so much for joining us. Here's what you'll see in this episode. First, we'll give you a quick highlight of Food and Drink Boulevard, an annual summer kickoff event hosted by the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance. This evening of food and drinks is accompanied by music and entertainment up and down Harlem's restaurant row. Next, our Harlem History segment will continue. Our historian and tour guide, Lavelle Porter, will give you part 2 of his descriptive overview of Harlem. Camarades del Barrio is a restaurant, bar, music venue, art gallery, dance hall, and gathering place all in one. Our host, William Vargas, will take you inside to meet the managing owner, have a bite of their Puerto Rican pub food, and of course, try their famous sangria. And finally, Lydia Patel will sit down to finish her conversation with Marcia Sells of Columbia University, who is also a longtime Harlem resident. They talk about Columbia's past, present, and future relationship with Harlem, and some of the great neighborhood spots that Marcia enjoys. That's what to expect on this episode. Hope you're ready. Now to the fun on Frederick Douglass.
All right, so you're here tonight. What brought you out to the second annual Food and Drink Boulevard?
I mean, I just love the festivity of it, like walking up and down the streets and being able to bump into your neighbors that you haven't seen in a while, the drinking. It's almost like being in New Orleans. They're like drinking out on the streets. It's festive. It's fun.
And what about you, LaChessa?
I definitely support the businesses in Harlem, and I think this is yet another opportunity because, of course, the wonderful discounts. And then everyone has really special drinks. So I think it's just an opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity to see other restaurants. Sometimes you go to the same restaurant over and over again, so at least now you can try something new.
Here at the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance second annual Food and Drink Boulevard. I've got our title sponsor here with us tonight, Brian Blake, who's the Vice President of Spring Bank, and his associate, Miriam Cisse, here tonight for such a great event happening here in Harlem. Brian, how do you feel to see your event unfold?
It's wonderful to see everybody having a great time. We're having a great time ourselves, and hopefully everybody is just drinking themselves and eating themselves silly. It's great.
And Miriam, what do you think watching everyone here tonight?
It's fantastic. It's really great to have seen all the businesses coming out and participate. It's fantastic to just see everybody participate.
Now, how many restaurants and bars actually took place and are actually featured here tonight?
There's 10 restaurants and bars that are participating, and all of them have offered fantastic drinks. I think both through the sponsor Riazul Tequila, and there's a lot of beers that are involved. We want everybody to have a great time, and I think they've provided the tools to do that.
Hi, I'm Lavelle Porter from Big Onion Walking Tours for Destination Harlem TV. So Harlem is famously known as an African-American community. And to really put the significance of Harlem in context, we have to talk about the history of African Americans in New York City. The first black community began to form in the early 1800s, and this was in Lower Manhattan, near where the City Hall and courthouse areas are now. And in the 1800s, that was a neighborhood known as the Five Points. So named because of three intersecting streets that created a kind of five-point star that was the center of that neighborhood. And people who lived in the Five Points in the early 1800s were people who were on the lowest rungs of society. And at this time, many of them were free blacks. And by the 1840s, many Irish immigrants began to come over and settle into the Five Points. And we say free blacks because there was slavery in New York. People generally think of that as a Southern institution. But slaves were instrumental in building New York in its early years. And in fact, the first people of African descent to actually set foot in Harlem were slaves of the Dutch in the 1650s. So slave labor was really instrumental in building New York and creating a lot of the wealth that was in this community. So by the end of the 1700s, slavery was beginning to be outlawed in New York. The process of gradual abolition began in 1799. By 1827, slavery is completely outlawed in New York State. Even prior to that time, though, you had a population of free blacks settling in the city, particularly down in the Five Points. So the Five Points is significant to Harlem's history because some institutions that are now in Harlem actually got their start down in the Five Points in the 1800s. Among them, St. Philip's Episcopal Church and Abyssinian Baptist Church, both founded down in the Five Points in the 1800s, eventually migrated up to Harlem by the early 1900s. So over the course of the 1800s, the community moved up the west side of Manhattan. By the end of the 1800s, you had a settlement around 60th and 64th Street, where Lincoln Center is now. And that was a neighborhood that was nicknamed San Juan Hill. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were some African American institutions in the neighborhood of San Juan Hill. But beginning in the 1900s, things began to shift into Harlem. And when it comes to the population of Harlem, the biggest source of people and one of the most important movements in its history is a movement that we call the Great Migration. And this was when millions of African Americans began to leave the South and settle in northern cities like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, and out west in places like Los Angeles. And there were many push and pull factors involved in this movement. People were getting away from exploitative sharecropping in the South. Remember, the South is still very much an agrarian economy run by a planter class that was interested in keeping the cheap labor source there in the South. And so many people were entrapped in very exploitative sharecropping situations in the South. And so people decided to make this move to the north. There were jobs in the north with industrialization and jobs related to industry. And so many African Americans began to move out of the South and settle in the north. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, between 1890 and 1930, in that 40-year span, 2 million blacks moved from the South to the north in that time, many more coming after them. In New York, at around 1900, the black population was about 60,000. And by 1930, it's 328,000. Many people coming right into Harlem. And so you see this confluence of forces we talked about. You have this population of people moving in the city, and then you had availability of housing in this newly developing neighborhood. However, this wasn't a smooth process. And in fact, many people who had already settled in Harlem, many of them white Americans, European immigrants beginning to settle in that neighborhood, didn't like the fact that there were blacks beginning to move into the neighborhood. And some actually formed what were known as covenant blocks. And these were agreements that they were not going to rent to any new black tenants on these particular blocks in Harlem. However, you could say that economic self-interest won out. Landlords began to realize that they could fill their buildings with black tenants. And this was before many equal opportunity housing laws were on the books that we have now. And so blacks were actually paying more for rent in Harlem than they would in other parts of the city. So essentially it is this process of overbuilding and population movement that led to the creation of the Harlem that we know today.
This next segment is a little hard to define what it really is about. Camarados del Barrio is a restaurant and bar, yes, but it has so much more going on. Great art, engaging music, dancing. They define their food as Puerto Rican pub fare and claim to have the best sangria. Let's join William Vargas and see if he can help us understand a little better.
Hey, what's up? This is Will Vargas with Destination Harlem TV. I'm here at Camarada del Barrio. Something's always popping, something's always happening. Let's go check it out. So, Orlando, you opened in 2004.
Yes, we did.
How did that whole idea work out with opening the business, Camaradas?
Camaradas, well, we opened up in 2004, and our intentions was to create a place where people can come and relax and have a good time. It's a very loose atmosphere. There weren't very many pub-style bars in East Harlem, so we decided that this would be a good location to open up a kind of a Latino-style pub, because that's what we did. We combined kind of like the Latin aspect with the Irish pub kind of model. Our food is very Latin-centric, and it's what I call it New Yorican pub food. That's what I call it. It's a very simple menu. We keep our ingredients are fresh. We don't buy anything frozen. Most of our dishes are made a la carte, which is kind of unusual for a pub where they usually sell you frozen chicken wings and things of that nature. But we don't do that. Our food is definitely inspired by kind of Puerto Rican cuisine. We have several different items that we felt that would match up well with beer. There are certain items that very few people know about. And one of the inspirations for the menu was the cuchifrito, which was, you would find these small little countertop restaurants all over New York, Latin New York, basically, that served pretty much everything fried. And you could get all parts of the pig in one spot, you know what I mean, from the ears to the snout. From the tail to the snout, rather. And we kind of were inspired by that, and then we started to do things like alcapurrias, which is basically a patty, a meat-filled patty, and there's green bananas on the outside and ground beef in the inside. And we also make it out of yuca on the outside with ground beef in the inside. But these were items normally that you would only find in a cuchifrito, not in a bar kind of setting, and usually not even in a restaurant setting. It was kind of like, specific to cuchifritos. But one of the things that we did that was different is that we don't cook a huge batch and then put it on the hot lamps. What we do is that we have them prepared, but they're raw, and then we fry them. So you're getting it as fresh as we could possibly give it to you.
And you also have specifics on your menu as a
Yeah,
restaurant.
we have a couple of favorites, things that if I took off the menu, people would be protesting outside. One of the things that we have that's very popular is the Jíbaro sandwich. Now, the Jíbaro sandwich, in other parts of Latin America, they call it el patacón. We drew inspiration from the Puerto Ricans in Chicago. As far as I know, because origin stories always differ, but as far as I know, that was a sandwich created in Chicago, in the Puerto Rican community in Chicago. And basically this is what it is. Instead of bread, we use plantains. And in the middle, you have pernil, which is, is pork shoulder. And you cook that, you cook that low and slow until it shreds. And that's the meat in the sandwich. We have our own camarada sauce that we add to it. A little slice of plum tomato, a little bit of mixed greens, and then you press it in between basically two tostones. And that sandwich is our hottest seller. It's our most popular item.
And also I saw you have world famous sangria.
Our sangria goes by many names. People have called it Santagrias. People have asked us what's in it. It definitely, let's just say it is the social lubricant of camaradas, and it's very popular amongst our customers. Yeah, people rave about it. I personally don't drink it because I operate under the old school rule is don't get high on your own supply, but nevertheless, I mean, it's a wonderful concoction, and people really enjoy it. And like I said, it acts as a social lubricant in here, and it really gets people going.
And also I know that you do things weekly and monthly. Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, we do. In our entertainment schedule, we have several DJs and live bands that are in residency. That means they play either once a month or twice a month, depending on what arrangement we come to. People like Jibo the Pro that does our Way Back Wednesday party, which was tonight, actually, on Wednesdays. And then we have the one that I'm really excited about, because people have been asking me for a long time to bring in some salsa bands into Camaradas. But I needed to find what I felt was salsa bands doing something new and different. So I found two great bands, and what they play the fourth Saturday and the fourth Friday of the month. The fourth Friday of the month is a band called Flaco and the Razor Blades. And what he brings new to the salsa game is that he comes from the spoken word tradition. So he kind of works that into his moña, to use a salsa phrase. And it's unique, and it's a wonderful sound, and people love it, and they have a great time with it. The other band on the fourth Saturday is Avenida B. What I love about this band, they're a Lower East Side based salsa band, but what I love about this band is they're not just doing covers. They have their own original tunes. And so I'm really kind of happy and excited of going into the summer, having these bands play the fourth Friday and the fourth Saturday, because I think it's going to be an amazing lineup.
And also, Camaradas does things in the community. Can you tell me about that?
Well, we try to do as much as we can. One of the things that we do is that we noticed quickly that there were a lot of nonprofit organizations in East Harlem, especially cultural organizations. So what we do with them is that whenever they need to do a fundraiser or something of that nature, we've donated food in the past, but what we like to do mostly is that we loan them the space, and we allow them to have their fundraiser here during hours of operation at no cost to them. We don't charge them a fee to do the fundraiser.
Orlando, thanks. Give us our time. This is Will Vargas with Destination Harlem TV here at Camaradas Barrio, camaradasdelbarrio.com. Come down and check them out.
Now, Lydia Patel will continue and conclude her chat with Marcia Sells, a Dean and Associate Vice President at Columbia University. They'll talk further about Columbia's involvement with the community and some of Marcia's experience as a Harlemite.
Columbia has such a long history in Harlem and working on a lot of initiatives. Why don't you tell us about some of those initiatives?
It's interesting. I like that you say that Columbia has a long history in Harlem, and it is true, although I think many of our friends and neighbors have not always thought that. But the building where we are, where my office is located, is actually called Low Library, and it was here in the 1890s when all of this was essentially farmland. So we really have been here for a very long time and watched a community grow up. But we also, as an organization and as a university, have also grown up in terms of understanding what it means to essentially be a neighbor in a community. I won't say it just happened yesterday. It has been something that the university has been engaged in over 45 years. But it is something that probably has intensified because of our project in terms of Manhattanville. So we have for 45 years, there's been a program called Double Discovery, which brings students from local high schools and middle schools to the campus. It also runs a summer program where kids then live on campus for 6 weeks. All of that is free. I should say also for 60 years, the university has also had a program called Columbia Community Service, which gives grants to not-for-profit organizations within the neighborhood. We also have a program called Community Impact, which is actually worked for 31 years with direct service programs, both advocacy around homeless and emergency shelter issues to youth and mentorship and health care. So, and then that doesn't even get to what Columbia's medical center and hospital and dental program have
That's
also
quite a
done.
bit.
So there is a rich number of programs that we've been involved in to engage. We also now have a School of the Arts and have had one for a number of years, but it too is also, and which is one of the reasons I have this other hat, doing a lot in terms of reaching out to the community and working on programs and projects to both invite people to come on our campus to see our Wallet Gallery or to attend our theater events at Miller Theater, or after school programs that we are going to work on with Teachers College to create for local schools. So there is indeed a rich history and more to come.
Even though Columbia is known and there's so many great programs, you find that it could be a challenge to just get the word out there and get people to get fresh faces, get new blood in here.
Yes, I think part of it is because of the campus that we're on now, the McKim-Mead White style campus that was created in the 1800s, that created walls that faced out to the street and seems to sometimes appear to be a barrier for people coming in. And then the gates, although the gates are open, you can walk across campus. People sometimes are hesitant to do that. But that is indeed one of the main goals of the new campus that's going to happen at 125th Street to 133rd, is to create an environment that says, come in, that there are exciting and interesting ideas and things out there for you to do.
In terms of yourself, what has been, what would you consider rather, a highlight of your career and being in Harlem?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a hard one. Highlight of my career. In addition to being able to buy a house in Harlem, which I thought was a pretty big accomplishment, and buying it before prices got crazy in the 1990s, around 1996, but and sort of really, saying this is my home in a way, since I'd come here and it worked. I would say that was a big moment. Since I moved in '96, I've watched the neighborhood, add some more restaurants, changes even in the grocery stores, and you realize too, and services, and I wouldn't say people talk about people moving out. I would say that there are new people have moved in, but not so much everybody from the community has moved out, but they also are able to reap the benefits of some of the changes. They're great restaurants. Like the other day, my husband and I decided on a Saturday night we wanted to go for a drink, and we didn't have to get on the train, the A train, and go someplace else. We could actually walk up the street, go to Broadway in the 50s, go to Tonelli's, and have a great drink and wonderful appetizers. We had his birthday party there for 15 guests, a little time back. Harlem Public is new. It's only about 6 months. A little younger crowd. I have to realize I've gotten older, but it's a little younger crowd. But if you want to watch sports, it's a great place. And then in the summertime, this wonderful coffee shop called Chip Cup actually has, a backyard garden that you can hang out in.
Would you say that for a lot of people living in Harlem, that with all the new developments and so many great things right here, there's not even a need to really have to go that far out?
No, there isn't. And there is a really strong, thriving cultural, which has always been, it's sort of weird to say that it's a strong cultural experience now. culture has always been a big part of what is Harlem. It is also one of the things I think when people think about Harlem and makes it iconic. But this new generation of arts and culture from places like Harlem Stage, with Pat Cruz and her team creating, new, modern, and having younger artists come in. The Apollo. It is not just about the amateur hour. There's a number of different programs that they do. There's the museum, Studio Museum in Harlem, which is an amazing 20th century and 21st century contemporary arts place. The Schomburg has now been revised and also is doing programs. So you really can have very full. You can go to an event, then you can go to great restaurants, the ones that I've mentioned, but also along the water. There's Covo and Hudson River Cafe. So all of those things, are great changes and great aspects of the sort of new and thriving Harlem.
So Marcia Sells, thank you so much for joining us here today. And once again, Marcia Sells of Columbia University School of the Arts.
Well, that's it for this second episode of Destination Harlem TV. We at DHTV really love showing you the best nightlife and music, food and drinks, shops, events, and people of Harlem. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Please remember to like us on Facebook, to follow us and join the conversation on Twitter. Check out some of our behind-the-scenes photos on Instagram and stay up to date on our webpage. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Meg Malley, and we'll see you next time.
This is why we don't work with kids and animals.
My booty!